This is a clip from the Cannon podcast. To hear the full episode and get access to exclusive benefits, head over to patreon.com/thecannonpod and sign up for just £3 a month. Let's move on to this. If we're looking ahead to next season, is there a single player, or possibly, I know you like to talk about it in pods, so maybe we could talk about pods, but stick with single players, better for the YouTube thumbnail. So is there a single player that you think is going to go on and surprise people next season? Do you have a name in the Arsenal squad that you think, I think this guy within a couple of months, by the end of the season, whatever you see the timeline being, a guy that we're not necessarily talking about right now, that we will be certainly talking about in at some point? So you're nodding your head.
It won't come as a surprise, and has to be a central running power favorite, and it's Emile Smith-Rowe. I was dying to talk about the 19-minute cameo because I just think he's a player that divides opinion right now. I just think he's a player that looks focused. He looks ready. And I really think that we're going to see somebody that would maybe ask some really uncomfortable questions of our big £65 million signing. They're different players. They want to do the same role in a very different way. When I look at Emile Smith-Rowe, I actually envision that second striker role on purpose because I think they both would be brilliant at it. And I think they do it in different ways that you could ask both to perform the role for different opposition. Kai Havertz does it a lot more off the ball in terms of his off the ball running and potential aerial ability. Emile Smith-Rowe does it through quick combination, separation, but both are able to finish chances brilliantly, both outside and inside the box. And so I think for me, I ultimately see him taking a really big step up. And I think that he's been very pointed and a man on a mission this preseason. When I start to look at all the small things, even trying to remove my bias of the player. Okay, Blink 182. There's a lot of things that I would say that you would want from a player, and I think I've said this in previous pods, but listen, if I'm somebody that has attitude problems, I'm not getting a trainer in the off season before I go. I'm not going to the under 21s because I'm an England international, and I'm not cutting my vacation short to come join up with the team.
Can I just briefly interject on that? I think that's down to people online who want to seem in the know. So they've heard a rumour about something and they're sort of going, well, if you knew what I knew about Smith-Rowe. And it's like, mate, okay, but realistically, exactly what you're saying.
Well, I look at that evidence, and look, maybe he did. Here, I'll hold my hands up, and that's fine. But then you must admit that some of the actions that you're seeing see a
counter
change.
That idea,
yeah, like they see a change, or maybe a flick has been switched. Like whatever you want to call it, what we've seen anecdotally right now is very different to what I'm seeing objectively, right? And objectively, Emile Smith-Rowe's 19-minute cameo is some of the best I've seen in over 6 months. Now, that's more of a criticism than a compliment because, he's been injured, right? But again, the point still stands. I thought he looked bright. I thought he looked sharp. And I thought he looked like with a man on a mission. And I don't feel that he basically, with that cameo, in my opinion, asked questions of the manager. That's all you can do for a player that's on the fringes or somebody that isn't in your limelight. You have to ask questions. And I think he did that. I think he did it brilliantly. And I can just see a really big season from him personally.
Yeah. And I think we spoke about this at some point in one of our many conversations. We spoke about this at some point about how there's a gap. If you're looking at the right wing, you're not looking at Arsenal's right wing and going, there's an opportunity there. Bukayo Saka has that on lock. But the idea that the central part of our midfield, when we spent the first part of this podcast talking about how we fix that. And so I think there is definitely a space for him to stamp some kind of authority on that,
especially
and provide
with
some answers.
Yeah, and especially with it confirmed that Odegaard will be playing deeper this season. I think that's huge. No matter what, and no matter the performances, Odegaard has operated far deeper in preseason. I don't see that changing.
Could also be huge for Fabio Vieira, because I think part of his problem was Odegaard occupying their spaces. Yes, I am going to go for someone a bit more fun. God, talking all this tactical stuff. You don't need tactics. Just mentality. What are you talking about? Leaders.
Has he got the minerals?
Maguire. Yeah, I'm going to go for Martinelli. I think this season with the Champions League, I think if we take last season as Bukayo Saka's worldwide breakout season. We all knew about him. We all knew he was special. But I think last season really cemented this idea that he is one of the best wingers in the world. I don't think anyone would argue that now. I think if you went back to 2021, people would be like, Saka at Arsenal, really? But now I think we've seen that, and he's proved himself, on the international stage as well as made himself one of England's best players, really. I was going to say the best player, but I'll get cooked for that. I'll just say that privately. I think we saw that from Saka, but I think the next stage for Martinelli is that superstardom. And you look at his non-penalty XG numbers, they're the same as Saka's. They're the same as Saka's. You look at his overperformance of XG, same as Saka's. He has all the minerals, as you mentioned. And as we are reinventing this left-hand side, I wonder how him getting much more into lane 2 or 4, depending which way you look at it, is going to really help him. I think the fact that we haven't yet gone and bought because you have to look at these things in a symbiotic sense, right? If you buy a player, it's not just what that player can bring and the role they bring, like say a Declan Rice. What can Declan Rice do for a Kai Havertz? What can Declan Rice do for a Martin Odegaard? And I think this remodelling in the midfield, I think will really help Martinelli and the development of the team, the development of Jesus, etc., etc. And also, he's just a young man. He's going to develop. And I think we're seeing him turn into and flower into an incredible footballer. And I think next season on the Champions League stage specifically, I think Martinelli will really thrive in those zones. He feels like the sort of player who was born to play in those situations. And yeah, I'm really excited to see where Martinelli goes. On the flip side of that, is there anyone else, Fabio Vieira, who you think might possibly... Is there any? I don't have an agenda. I do. Is there anyone else in the Arsenal squad that you think we're talking about now, or possibly that is maybe rated in a certain sense by the fan base, that this time next year, or in 3 months' time, or whatever timeline you want to pick, might be out of the conversation? Similar to, let's say, the way Tierney was spoken about in 2021 or 2020, and was spoken about last season, and he might have a remontada. But who do you think is that player who's going to go through that period?
I might be stealing yours, but I think it's Zinchenko, ultimately.
Thanks for checking out the Cannon Podcast. To get full episodes and access to exclusive benefits, head over to patreon.com/thecannonpod and sign up for just £3 a month.